At the recent ProQuest event here in Portland at Gangai Games, we had a Dash.io piloted by Mint Carroll not only make it into the top 8, but actually make it into the finals. And this is a hero that I've been very interested in learning more about. So I reached out to Mint and said, hey, can you come on, talk to us about your run, and maybe teach me a little bit about playing Dash.io. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. So a couple weeks ago, actually about 10 days ago at this point, we had the ProQuest Season 5 event at Gangai Games, and in the finals of that event, making a heck of a run through the top 8, was this gentleman right here piloting Dash.io. So Mint, how are we doing, my friend?
Doing pretty well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So the Gangai event was, like I said, about 10 days ago from the point of this going live. There was another ProQuest weekend a couple days ago. How did that go for you?
Not nearly as well. I ended up losing one, winning one, losing one, dropping. Mm-hmm. Because we had, well, round one was team kill, unfortunately. Myself versus Austin, and just kind of went down from there. Lots of really close matches, though. Like, all of my matches were incredibly tight. Don't feel particularly bad about any of them.
And were you on the same deck still, Dash.io?
Same. Okay. I had made 2 very minor error changes.
Okay. Well, when we go through the
almost
deck
exactly
list,
the same deck, yeah.
When we go through the deck list, I will make sure to ask you about that. I just noted that down. So first, before we get into this, like I mentioned, in the finals of a ProQuest with a hero that I think is very good, but has not been performing, across the world to date. So what's your background in gaming? First off, what drew you to Flesh and Blood, and then why Dash?
Yeah, so I hadn't played any TCGs before Flesh and Blood. I have a fair amount of experience with just general 52 card deck card games. Played a fair amount of Texas Hold'em as a child, oddly. And then lots of video games of kind of similar-ish variety. Played a lot of Slay the Spire before coming to this. And then just had some friends get into it, decided, hey, that looks fun, might as well try it out. This was, I think I started playing just the beginning of this last October. Started on a pre-con Blitz Kano deck. And jumped into CC not maybe a month and a half later. Okay. Really, so my first experience with you was the RTN then in Gangai. That's funny. I feel like you've been around longer than that, but maybe not. Yeah, that I think is accurate.
Yeah, would have been January of this year. Yeah, interesting. Yep. Time flies, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that was I brought the ProQuest. I was like, oh, hey, good to see you again. So fair enough. All right. So then, so with that said, why Dash? You started with Kano. That would have been a good path to continue down. Why Dash?
I was a little bit at first when people were like, oh, you could play Kano in CC. I was slightly intimidated by the whole memorizing pitch stack shenanigans. Not that I wouldn't think about trying that at some point now. But my first experience with Dash.io was actually in the pre-release of Bright Lights, which was my first pre-release, where I played her and did super well in the pre-release, just of limited. I just kind of fell in love with it. It was all of the random, weird, do things, think a lot that I enjoyed about Kano without as much of the memorization. I decided to throw together a CC list actually before the 14-1 calling that ended up looking not anywhere close to what it looks like now. And I've tried other heroes, and I just often find a lot of the other ones kind of a little bit boring sometimes, and enjoy the have to think my way through it that Dash.io presents.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Well, what I'd like to do now is go ahead and bring up your deck, because that's what the kids want after all. I mean, they've probably already jammed the link and left, but if they want the strategy, they got to stick around for you, right? So what I'll do is I'll run through the list, and as we go through that, I may have some questions to ask, or you can stop me and point out kind of a special include or something that you thought was very valuable to you, or as in the case you mentioned earlier, something you've decided is not worth playing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we start off with 3 backup reds. That seems to make a lot of sense. 3 BIOS updates. How much work did that do for you over the course of the Gongai tournament?
I think I had at least 2 games where I BIOS updated a Tekla Pounder, much to my opponent's dismay. But really, the BIOS update didn't play as huge of a role in my games at Gongai as it is more intended for like the fatigue matches. I play at least 2 copies regardless of who I'm against, just because of my ratios, but it's not really for most of the matchups that I ended up seeing at Gongai.
Okay, fair enough. 3 boom grenades. I wonder what those are doing in there. Yeah, fair enough. 1 copy of convection amplifier. So talk me through the one of here.
Yeah, convection amplifier is just for fatigue. It's really intended as the get a couple big hits in, preferably in order to land a boom grenade, or probably at the very end. And I can talk a little bit more when we get to that card too. Also a one of for Hyper Scrapper.
Okay, fair enough. So Dissolving Shield, 3 of those I think makes sense. One thing that I found is an interesting omission, and you can talk me through, is I always forget which one's the ward and which one's to take counters off, right? But there's 2 cards that functionally do similar things in the Dash pack, or I guess the Mechanologist package from that set. So why Dissolving Shield over the ward? Is it just because the ward can pop too easy?
Yeah, so Dissolving Shield gives you some flexibility. It can act almost exactly the same as the ward, in just by doing all 3 counters at once. But it can also do a bunch of other fun things. It's great for taking into ninjas and assassins for dagger. And then with Dissolving Shield, you can actually you've got 3 counters, presuming that you didn't crank it. You can Dissolving 2, and then you can Galvanize the item, which gives you a huge amount more value. Also, it costs 0. And the other item that is ward costs 1. And that's
yeah, fair enough.
A huge difference.
Right, because Dash obviously adds the +1. So, okay. Yeah. All right. So 3 high octanes. I think that one kind of speaks for itself in the pew, 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 pew. I saw one game, I think it was you. The individual did a twin drive into that and ended up having like 5 or 6 action points at one point. Yeah, pretty gross.
Yeah.
2 max Velos. So how'd you land on 2? Is that in every matchup, or where does that fit in?
It's definitely not in every matchup. I'm running 1 in probably 60% of my matchups. And then there might be one matchup where I'm not running any. I'd have to check. And then 2 into both the really fastest race and into fatigue.
Okay.
I find that when I'm going up against something like an Azalea, having 2 max Vs, I just see too much disruption to get them both off, or to find it particularly useful.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, 2 copies of Outpace Red, 3 copies of Pulse Wave Harpoon. Card does serious work. 2 Scramble Pulses. Have you found that 2 is the right answer with the Warriors, or were you missing a copy? And by missing,
I haven't.
Would you wish you would have run another?
Completely decided on that. It costs 2, which makes adding more hard, but especially if we're seeing with the new Kayo armor to come next weekend, I might be on more.
Okay.
Depending on how that impacts things. It's great for Guardian, great for Warrior, but if it ends up also being good for Brute.
Yeah, fair enough. And then kind of the slap your back on that one's the T-Bone, right? Scramble Pulse, T-Bone, Great partners right there. So there is only the red, or sorry, I think you have blue T-Bone as well. Yes, you do. So you have red, blue, no yellow.
I do.
Yep. 3 Throttle Reds also in the blue flavor. 0 to 60 is in the red and the blue, but interestingly not on the yellow. Is that just because it's a 3 breakpoint?
So that's actually something that's changed. Is I only have them in the red now.
Okay.
0 to 60s. I switched my 1 blue out for which is it? I believe a dive through data. Blue.
That's the opt one, right? Opt on hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, fair enough. And then we do have Zipper in all 3, or no, sorry, not blue, just red and yellow.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is, a deviation from a lot of standard mech lists. You start and you just windmill slam in. You've got 27 copies on the table before you even start whipping out your pencil, right? So that's an interesting deviation.
I found that obviously the damage of 4 and above of everything feels great. But when you get to like yellow 0 to 60s, which are only coming in for 3, which is just a card, and then the blue Zipper hits similarly, and then blue 0 to 60, I found that there's nothing I can do with 2 damage that I can't do with 1 damage in this scenario.
Okay, I get it. All right, moving into the yellows. So we have 1 Boom Grenade. We have 3 Spark of Genius. I think that one kind of speaks for itself. Tome of Fyendal is also very, very, very popular in the Dash.io builds. Can you talk folks who may not be familiar with the build through why?
Yeah. So Dash.io makes a whole lot of action points. You have a ton of items that you can play off the top, crank, and suddenly you've got 2 action points, which means you get to play Tome. That on top of high octane, and you have a bunch of ways of dealing with the potential of the scary thing if you were to be playing regular dash would be boosting a tome, but you're going to see them first. And you have a bunch of ways of dealing with that, from boosting twice with Trend Drive to Tekla Foundry Harding if you've already boosted once that turn, to Crown.
Okay. So yeah, that's pretty solid. And then we spoke to Zipper. Now, one thing that is interestingly absent in yellow is a penetration script, right? That's the one that comes in for +1. It's effectively like an attack reaction with her. So in your testing, you found that not to be just worth the value?
Yeah. I was running it when we still had Dromai, because it turns all of your 5s into 6 poppers, which feels awesome. But now that there's less worry about that, I find that you just don't get the value off of it for 1 cost. You don't actually get more than 2, maybe 3 value out of it.
Okay, fair enough. Right, so moving into the blues, and stop me if I am moving too fast, but there's some of these we've already talked about, right? So we have 3 expedites. That's the one that gets +1 on item boost. Is that correct? Or on hit, put 1 in arena?
Expedite is on hit, you can put an item with cost 0 or 1 from your hand into the arena.
Yeah.
I find that it's basically another blue T-bone.
Mm-hmm.
It forces the block, and often with equipment. So you can play a blue expedite into a blue T-bone, and suddenly you have 2 equipment. And if not, they're forcing a whole card from hand, or you could be faking it, or you get an item into the arena. So it's a card that not as many Dash IOs I've seen are running, but that I have found works quite well.
Okay. So that's the secret tech right there. Actually, I don't know that that's secret tech. Fuel injector. I don't know that fuel injector is a secret anymore, to be fair. But 3 copies of fuel injector. This thing did serious work for you last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago.
Yeah, I quite like it. I'm actually only on 2 now. I've switched 1 for a blue backup protocol. Haven't decided where I'm going with that. I might switch it back. Then that's just because I felt like I was low on crank items with the fuel injector. But I really prefer the utility of the fuel injector, having it around for longer. And then it's great into fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll admit I didn't until I saw you playing it last weekend. I'll admit it didn't really register to me that it was a recyclable dash symbiosis charge.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't land.
Yeah,
that's why I'm bad at these games sometimes.
Theoretically infinite infinite. It's not a pistol. Infinite gun charges.
Pistol's not a gun, damn it.
Super helpful in fatigue.
All right, fair enough. So you had already mentioned Hyper Scrapper earlier. So walk us through this one. You said this is one of your interesting cards, under one of.
Yeah. So this is the pair with Convection Amplifier into fatigue. I'm only running it into fatigue. Similarly, it's until end of game. It's just a blue pitch, and then when you get to end of game and they have 8 health, and you can't get over it, and you're down to the last dregs of your deck, you have a Hyper Scrapper and 3 blues in hand, or hopefully more resources even than that, and you can dominate 12 often or more. Just by banishing all of the items that have ended up in your graveyard.
Yeah, and I personally like, for dumb players like me, cards like this are great, right? Because they're self-pitch stacking. I love cards like that.
Yeah. Feels really good. And then I don't have to worry about the being as clean with my pitch stack, and it's great for second pitch stack too, when you've gone through what you're actually trying to do for damage and you're still not quite getting over.
All right, fair enough. So Signal Jammer, this one did amazing work, but I wanted to ask you, what match is this? A sideboard card? Is this only for specific matchups? Where's
definitely only for specific matchups? I'm really the only person I've seen lists of who is running it, and I am now running 2 because there are so many Azaleas. There's so many Azaleas, and it's a 2-turn, very slightly worse Warmongers. And it impacts me too, but only if I want to keep it around. So you can play a Signal Jammer. It comes in with a counter, which gets removed at the start of your turn, but you can choose not to remove the counter and destroy the Signal Jammer if you happen to want to play more non-attack actions on your turn. Great into Azalea. Great into the already phenomenal Kano matchup. There's at least a couple other matchups I'm running it in. Boltyn to prevent the double Lumina. There's 2 or 3 more, but I'm not thinking them off the top of my head.
Yeah, probably not major meta shakers.
No.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'll put up the image of the top 8, but there was no shortage of Azaleas in the top 8 that Mint chewed through. So, all right. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
I should say Signal Jammer is the one card I'm not running into Fatigue. I'm otherwise fat stacking, but it is completely useless, of course, against like Guardian.
Yeah, makes sense. T-Bone we spoke to. Teklo Core, good for resources. Is 3 of them the right? Does 3 of them the right number?
Oh yeah, I would run 5 if I could.
Fair enough. Teklo Pounder, I don't think anybody knows why that's in there. That's a joke, obviously. And then 3 throttles, which we spoke to. Now that brings us to the equipment. So I'm curious what your primary loadout is here. So obviously we've got Dash's gun, not a pistol. We have the Achilles accelerator. We have 2 adaptive platings, right? So that's flex slot. But then we have the head and the chest and the boots. So you're +1 adaptive plating. So when do you play the plating and not?
So I'm always running 1 in arms. I used to have a second arm option of oh boy, I've just forgotten the name of it.
The gauntlets?
+2 to 2 or more.
The Goliath gauntlets, yeah.
Goliath gauntlets. But basically determined that there weren't really any matchups where that was so hugely helpful that I wasn't already wildly winning the matchup. Like, sure, adaptive isn't great into Kano, but I don't care. I'm going to be most likely winning that matchup anyway.
I see.
And then I'm always running it for arms. And then I'm running 2 of, almost always as a replacement for boots. Into usually Azalea, Bravo whenever I see him, but not Victor, and not Betsy. Anything else that's like really heavy on the disruption side. Okay.
And then
go
ahead.
And or dominate side.
Right. Yeah. No, that actually makes a lot of sense into Azalea. Then the head, and then obviously for AB.
Yeah, and then when I'm doing that, I'm running fewer tomes because Achilles is one of the ways in which I can play tome. And so because I don't have that failsafe around, I'm running fewer tomes in those matchups.
I see. All right, well, fair enough. Let's we'll take the deck list down at this point, and let's just talk Dash.io in the meta. So things, we are in third week of ProQuest season at this point. We've seen, across the world, at least in the global meta, Kayo has been dominating, or not really dominating. He's been leading the pack, we should say. But the one that has me terrified and keeps me up at night is Prism. So are you okay with Prism because of the boots, or how does this all work out?
I'm great with Prism regardless of the boots. I have a bunch of extra action point generation from the crank items. I've played maybe 5 or 6. I've played. We may actually be going on more like 7, 8 Prism games now. I've yet to lose one. It feels like a great matchup. It was already decent for Dash, and it feels even better as Dash.io.
Okay, so what's the strategy there in terms of picking your targets? Do you when they get in? I mean, you don't have a ton of poppers. You've got a handful of them, but not a ton.
And I am running all of them into that matchup.
Sure. It is nice that you have, because they run Triumph, so your throttles aren't poppers in that matchup necessarily against Triumph. Max will pop anything. Max Fellow, I mean. But what targets are you picking with your pistols, with your boots? Do you blow down angels? What's your overall strategy there?
If I have extra action points, I'll sometimes go for angels with pistol. Of course. If I see an item on top that I can crank, and I am running more crank items into that matchup too, then use my usual ratio. If I see an item off the top that I can crank, I'll play it, crank it, kill an angel usually, if that makes sense in the situation. But otherwise, generally, I'm mostly just going for face. Kind of playing it as an aggro, go fast kind of game.
Okay, and then just hoping that the bleed damage pops a ward, right? Because you only have to leak one to technically kill an angel, right?
Right.
Okay. Any other advice for someone dumb like me who wants to pick up this deck maybe and try it because they're terrified of Prism? What else? Just go, or?
I'm not sure I have any other huge advice into the Prism matchup besides just play it a few times. You kind of just get... I'm still kind of unsure on... Despite repeatedly winning the matchup, I'm still a little unsure on what Prism's doing. I'll be honest. But you kind of just get the vibe of it as you play it a couple times. You just have to make sure you count right all the time and that you aren't leaving yourself, how do I say that? You're not planning to put yourself in a sticky situation. Because a lot of the times in some matchups, you are planning to put yourself in a sticky situation where often to max V, you're relying on a lot of things going right. And I'd say do that less against Prism. Rely on what you know will happen, and then once you know that things are going the way you know they are, proceed from there. Whereas into like Kayo, you kind of have to go a little luck.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense to just go face it KO. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
But you also have to kind of be like, oh, well, I think this max V will work out as long as I don't see a tome and I can pull this item off and all of that, which you should be doing into your regular aggro matchups that you should not be doing into Prism.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. So what's your take? I know, again, like you mentioned, the KO deck's coming out this weekend, which should help a little bit, I would think. Depends on if people run the new chess piece or not competitively. We'll see. But what's your take on kind of meta going into this last weekend here and where everybody fits?
KO and Prism kind of push out some of the Guardians, which feels good. Really, that's who I don't want to see is a fatigue Guardian. That hurts a lot. Because I'm running 2 Signal Jammers, I feel a little bit better into the other huge deck right now, Azalea. It's still not... I still doubt it's favored. But I'm getting pretty close to 50-50 on Azalea games. All that said, feeling pretty good about the coming meta. Not a little worried about Kayo having more armor and how that will impact that matchup, because it's already kind of 50-50. And so if that armor has a huge impact, we'll see. That might end up being the big worry, is how much better KO ends up feeling, or, well, how much worse for me KO ends up feeling.
Sure. Well, you've got another potential. You could add another scramble pulse if you wanted to. I know that's not necessarily ideal with the cost, but it's there. So
it's definitely a thought.
Okay. All right. Well, as we wrap this up, first off, I want to thank you for taking your Monday evening to chat with us here. But do you have any shout outs or any call outs you want to give?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely to all the boys on the Ancestral Alliance. Thanks for all of the plethora of games and talk and all of that. And thanks, yes, to my partner, Alex, who got me into this game and has done all of the wild traveling, and I send him links to events and oh, we should do this one, and he's like, oh, okay. And goes with it. So big appreciation for all of that. And then also to thanks to all of the prior staff at Kraken, which just closed down, had their last day on Sunday this weekend. But yeah, thanks to all those guys for making the environment there so phenomenal when I was getting into this game. That meant a huge amount. Gonna miss that place.
Yeah, that's a big blow to the Corvallis and actually the Northwest region community. We actually ended up losing a ProQuest because they were signed up and ready, but they had to shutter. So that is a shame. So I do hope all of you down there figure out a new place to play that is not accepting to y'all. So
yeah, we're working on it. Right now we're hosting in my dining room, but we're hoping to have an actual place at some point in the next few weeks. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for this. Like I said, I was really excited to see the Dash.io make top 8, and not only make top 8, cut through. I've had a lot of faith in that hero, but I haven't been able to quite figure it out. So I'm glad that somebody is on the track to show us the path. So thanks for this, and congrats. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll do my last note on the hero, which is, doesn't matter how good your list is. This is a hero that you need all of the reps. You need to play her. So if that's what you're looking to get into,
not very forgiving, huh?
Have fun with it.
Yeah, I can't just boost and get lucky on boom grenades. That's what you're telling me?
No. Sorry. Gotta put a little bit of brain into it.
Fair enough. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. And I don't know if you watch the channel or not, but say it with me. Go Commando.
Go Commando.